I'm just today I'm going to talk about training max auto regulation made simple, no Tendo required. Okay, it's going to be a great topic because I think that training maxes get butchered all the time. It's something I've come across something that I had to out of necessity I had to figure out because I just had all these questions. I needed some answers on how to make these adjustments on the fly and how to make sure that I'm being as accurate as possible to make sure I know what I'm training. Um, we're gonna go through this, and if you guys have questions at the end, I'd be glad to answer at the end. A little bit about me. I'm I've coached at just about every level, man. I've been involved with SEC football. I was an assistant director at the Division I level at the FCS. I've been at the D2 level. I've coached little kids, and now I'm at the high school level. But I would be remiss if I didn't go about this without thanking my mentors and all the people that have really helped me along the way. This is where they're at now. They really helped me at every stop that I've been at. Zach Ackenberger at Florida, Riley Allen at Ole Miss, Nate Peoples at Texas, Joseph Boyd with the Air Force Special Ops, Ben Souders at Georgia, Kyle Little at McNeese State, Alan Bishop over at Houston, and then my head football coach, Bob Gotze, here at Madison Academy. A bigger thank you's got to go out to my wife and my family. I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't without them and their support. There's nothing better in this life than being able to come home to those three right there, my dog, my wife, and my son, Beckham. Just had to shout them out. So here we go. One question that I saw that needs to be asked in every single program, Joey threw out on the Coaches versus COVID webinar a few days ago. Are you training what you think you are training? That's a huge, huge question everybody needs to ask. And as we go through this, you guys are going to see why it's so important that your training max become accurate. And I'm going to give you some tools. If you don't have Tendos, if you don't have push bands, if you don't have Gym Aware, that there's a way that you can get as close as possible without guessing. A couple of quotes here I want to start with. There are 100 ways to skin a cat, but only a few good ways, right? People talk about, oh, well, there's multiple ways to get certain training effects. Oh, well, there's multiple ways to get to California from Huntsville, Alabama. Well, you know what? There's only a few good ways to get there the right way. If I'm trying to go down and see the guys at FAU down in Boca, if I take the route to Texas, I can probably still get there, but it's going to take me a whole lot longer. Next quote, we have always believed that if there is an opportunity to learn something that will provide a competitive edge, it would be wrong to pursue it. Al Miller from The System, which is an unbelievable book if you haven't read it yet. Basically what this is saying is that you got to have a growth mindset in order to always provide what's best for your athletes. Even these guys back in the day were always looking for something, always looking for an edge, always looking to pursue it, always looking to learn. It's a big danger in our field if you always believe that this is the way we've always done it. And then the last one, probably the most important quote that's going to lead right into this presentation, is that confirmation bias is the tendency to give more weight to evidence that confirms our beliefs than to evidence that challenges them, from Catherine Scholes. Confirmation bias is all over the field, guys. Okay, there are always a lot of coaches that want to believe in one thing. They only find things that are going to confirm that, instead of the great coaches out there are going to look for evidence that challenges it, because if it stands up to those challenges over time, then you're on to something, right? If you stick with it, you believe in it, you see results from where you're at on the floor, down in the trenches, and looking for things that are going to confirm it, that's what we should be looking for. So what is a training max, right? It's a rough projection of a 1RM used to prescribe specific volume and intensity zones to elicit specific training effects. Okay, look, this is not necessarily a 1RM estimator. There's a lot of things that go into this, okay? The training max is simply the number that you train off of, right? Whenever you're writing programs, if you're writing programs off a percentage-based program, you got to have something to go off of, right? But it always comes down to, movement skill level and biomotor abilities, right? So it's a whole lot easier to project a max for a lift that's not near as complex. If you've got a young athlete that's still struggling with the clean, and you use these tools right here to try to project the training max the right way, it might not be as accurate for what they can actually hit for a 1RM, but it may be accurate for what they can train off of right now. It also can come down to fiber type dominance. Coach Alan Bishop talks about this all the time. This is a whole lot more prevalent even when it comes to like training female athletes. If you project, let's say like on a really good day, now let's say everything's out the window, right? You got, the lift, the technique's there, you're recovered, your CNS is in the right spot. If you got 90% of your 1RM, you're more than likely going to hit it around 4 reps on a really good day, right? That doesn't mean we always operate at 100%, but if you are, somewhere around there. But sometimes people that have more of a type 2 dominance may actually hit that number for like 5. But that might not mean that just because they hit it for one more rep that their 1RM may be higher than what it's actually projecting, right? So there's a lot of coaching and qualitative skill needed to be happening during all this. And you got to always make sure you're checking yourself as you go. I want you guys to understand, you got to be a coach, man. There's no foolproof way. You got to have an eye. You got to make adjustments. This is just a way to get you really close in the ballpark so you can stay consistent. So here's some common routes I see in strength conditioning in order to get a training max, all right? The first one is I see coaches, they just start training without any training max, and they don't even program, without it. There's no intensities ever prescribed. They just go off RPE and movement. And guys, if you think that that's not prevalent, even at the highest level, it is. I've seen it happen. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but to me, I just feel like you're shooting a sawed off in order to trying to chase adaptations you can't really see. Other schools and other programs, they test 1RM early and then they test again at the end of the semester just to see results. It's a very elementary way to look at it. It's a big time trap you can fall into to see if your program is working, especially if that's really only one of your metrics to see. This happens a lot at my level here at the high school level, where we got a max to get a baseline, we got to work out, and we got to max at the end to see improvement, right? The thought process originally for coaches, especially high school football coaches, that it's on the right track, but there's a whole lot more variables involved that we have to pay attention to, that we have to be involved with in order to see progress towards sport, right? Remember, we're not training Olympic weightlifters. All right, some coaches test whatever RM, right? So they may test a 3RM, a 5RM, and they project and go from there. All right, kind of the same thing as testing a 1RM early. And then some coaches, which I think is what a lot of people do, is that they test whatever their test may be. It could be a multiple rep max, it could be a 1 rep max. It could be, just something to get a baseline, and then they guess as they go. So like if they train for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and they see that bar snapping, they're like, hey man, bump him 10, go up, right? That's probably the next best way where coaches are doing it. And I know a lot of coaches probably have a really good eye for that. But to me, I'm just like, man, I don't like that. I got to have answers. I want to have a systematic approach that gets me in a better ballpark. And then I can tweak and make small changes from there, right? And if you happen to have, a velocity-based training tool like GymAware, Tendo unit, push band, whatever it is, and a lot of coaches like to auto-regulate with velocity zones in order to get their effect. It's all good and great, right? But I was talking to Coach Bill Gillespie with Sore Necks the other day, and he made a really good point about how, somebody asked the question, do you think that all strength conditioning will eventually go to auto-regulation with velocity to be as accurate as possible? And he said no, because at the end of the day, there will always be that athlete that can walk in that weight room and figure out that, hey, if I just move slower today, I can use lighter weight, right? And it always comes down to culture. It always comes down to coachability. It always comes down to knowing your athletes. So there's always got to be some type of balance there. That's why I believe that velocity-based training can be great, but you also have to, I'd like to tie it in with intensity that way, and then alongside with your coaching ability and your culture and the standards that you have in training in order to get as close as you can to eliciting the best adaptations that you can. All right, training maxes get butchered, okay? One of the things I want to cover here is Goodhart's Law. This is an awesome law that one of my buddies, Taylor Quick, actually brought up to me that I think hits the nail on the head when it comes to chasing numbers. All right, so Goodhart's Law states, once a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure, okay? And for example, what that truly means is, let's say we look at it this way. Let's say your head coach really wants to see improvement, and the only way he can see improvement is 1RMs and PRs. Okay, so and then the coach doesn't know any other way to do that than to increase 1 rep max. So they're gonna get a 1 rep max, and then they're gonna train, right? And then in order for him to keep his job, right? And then even in some situations, like Coach Gillespie told me when he was with the Seahawks, that at the end of the year, if the kids didn't hit a PR they had to have a personal meeting with the head coach to tell them why. So when the whole atmosphere and the target of training is to increase PRs, compensations happen, right? Ranges of motion are going to get short just to get that target, to achieve that, and then no longer can this be a good measure of training, right? It's gonna bastardize everything that we do. It's gonna cheat everything from range of motion, the training effect you're going to get across the board. And I think this happens way too often in our field, man. This is something that's got to be worked on, and it's got to be seen better that we're training for training effect onto the field, not necessarily trying to get a better 1RM. I'm not saying that 1RMs are bad, guys. Like, I think testing is important. It's just a matter of how you go about it. And I'm just going to show you my way today and how I've gone about it and how I've actually seen results over some time. So here's the deal, like, not even Olympians focus on their 1RM that much, right? In the system, they talk about the Soviet program analysis. When they went back and looked at it, A.S. Medvedev, I think is his name, his work found that around 68% of his total volume in training were performed between 70 and 85% of 1RM. Only 5% of that total volume were ever over 90%. Okay, and this was in a sport where that number actually mattered, right? So this is how they won gold medals, by hitting a 1RM. It was super specific, right? Set principle right there. Even that was their goal, and they didn't even train all the time trying to hit a PR. That wasn't always their goal, right? And they got most of their adaptations from 70 to 85%. So why in the world, as us as coaches trying to set PRs or trying to chase numbers, when even the people that did this the best in the research and the people who have done it before us weren't even doing that. So look at the domino effect, all right? So this is what I was talking about earlier with Goodhart's law. Like, this is what I see happen quite often, especially at the high school level, right? There's some great coaches all over the country that are doing this the right way. I want to make sure they don't go unnoticed. But this is something that's happening, and people wonder why they feel like crap on the field, or why guys are sore, or why low backs hurt, or why we're not getting better. They have this false reality, right? So you set the 1RM as your main KPI, your key performance indicator, and they say the head coach demands to see PRs, right? Strength coach preaches 1RM improvement. Athletes know that they're going to get chewed if the PR is not met, so athletes are going to cheat movements and do whatever it takes. They're going to take the least path of resistance to get that PR, whether it means cheating range of motion, using weights that they weren't supposed to be using, and then from that comes a false implication of improvement. Even if you did see that number go up, what if your range of motion was shortened by 20%? Then it's a relative number. It's a relative assessment. Now everything is shot. You don't even know if you got better at that point. And at the end of the day, we're trying to train football players. We're trying to train athletes to get better on the field. We're trying to keep athletes healthy first and foremost. This isn't going to help us get better. So what's the point, right? Measurement is the first step that leads to control and eventually to improvement. If you can't measure something, you can't understand it. If you can't understand it, you can't control it. And if you can't control it, you can't improve it, right? So our job as strength coaches is to be a stress manager and an effect elicitor, all right? So what we're going to do is we're going to place stress over time with a prediction that something's going to come out of it, right? And most of the time, it's enhancing performance on the field, and keeping everybody healthy, and building, being robust and building durability. I say it all the time. I'm trying to remember that quote. Somebody told me, if what's measured can be managed, what's managed can be maximized. And then over time, if you continue these patterns and stay true to your concepts and stay true to your principles, eventually great strength coaches will be able to predict improvement. Right? I know if we do this, this, and this, we hit this amount of volumes, we hit this amount of miles per hour on the field, we hit this, this, and this. I know for a fact we're going to get better because this, and this. And then that brings value, right? That brings value to you as a coach, to you as a staff, and it can earn respect with the head coach. It can earn respect with administration, and then you can be more involved in decisions. There's a lot of people in this field that make a lot of excuses about and griping about their head coach and what they ask for, or griping about some things they can't control, when in reality you have to find a way to get it done and quit whining. There's too many excuses being made in this field not to get it done. We got to find a way to do that better. And I'm just trying to give you a tool to do it in a very simple manner that everybody can do. Everybody can execute this if they put in the work. Okay. Everybody can do this. as they go. If you're using percentage-based training, you better be sure that reference is accurate. Because at the end of the day, if your percentage is off by 20%, your training effect is different. Your volume allocations are different. You know, your intensity is too high for too much volume. Guess what? Your guys are going to be sore. Your guys are going to be hurt. Practice is going to suck, right? If you're not always evaluating, always assessing, always monitoring, you're going to be in a bad spot. And we can't afford that, man. You know, one bad training session, one thing that's off caused one of your players to get hurt, and now they're sitting on the bench. Ain't nobody being helped, right? I say at the bottom of my slides, it's my philosophy straight up. I stole this from Alan Bishop, and I stole this from Gary Schofield. It says health drives performance, play more, play better. That's all we're trying to do, man. Trying to drive health, keep us healthy, keep us on the field, perform well. I want our guys to play more and play even better after every single session. So what do we do from there? All right, now we're going to get down to the nuts and bolts of this. Number one, I believe if you've got a new group and you taking over a new program, and I understand that, you know, this doesn't always apply. You can do this if you can. But to me, you don't have time to waste, man. Just start training, right? And if you have some previous numbers available, work off 85 to 90% of that number and go, because you never want to assume that their technique and their standards were great. And at the end of the day, if you train off a lower training max, you're looking for more bar speed anyway. You have a much better chance of getting some training effect early, even while your maxes aren't accurate. If you take a whole week just to get baseline testing, you lost a whole week of training, right? I mean, especially in college football, man, you don't have much time, right? You got to get things done. You got the next things coming up next, right? You got spring ball coming up, then you got camp, and then you got the season, right? And then you got all these things coming up. You got to make sure your guys are prepared because the sport is so high demanding. Once you start training, the most important thing next is that you have to demand and establish standards of training. I cannot emphasize this enough, right? I've seen this done at a very high level across the board with some great coaches. Two of them I want to talk about is when I was at Mississippi State with Coach Savage, interning with those guys. They were coaching face-off and demanding standards of how they trained. When I was at Colorado State, watching Joey when he was coaching, just a lot of intensity of making sure things are right. And when we talk about that, right, one of the quotes I want to throw out there from Zatsiorsky from Science and Practice is, a muscle fiber that is recruited but not fatigued is not trained, right? So if you're allocating percentages for a certain training effect, like you want to call yourself a dynamic effort day, right? And they're rolling 60% for multiple sets of low volume, for sets of 2, sets of 3s, but their intent's not there to drive the velocity. You're not getting the same training effect, right? You're gonna see a lot of guys that are just, oh, it's light, I need to get it up. And then they think, oh, coach, it's too light. We got to put some more weight on the bar. We got to put some more weight on the bar. Okay, well, you got to understand what we're trying to do. It is our responsibility as coaches to make sure that we are 100% setting the standard of what's expected that day. Okay, every single time we approach that bar, our mind's right, we're ready to attack, right? We're going with great technique, everything that's upholding the standard, and make sure we're doing this the right way and trying to be as explosive as possible through what we're asked. I think there's too many coaches out there that are too laxed on that, right? They think that they write their pretty program on a piece of paper and they hand it out, and that's what's getting the results, man. If that was the case, then we wouldn't have jobs, right? We got to hold the standard at every single chance we have, because I tell you right now, kids won't hold themselves accountable for the most part. Now, you got some elite athletes that will, and those are the guys you got to lean on to help establish that culture. But guys, this just goes hand in hand, man. Great training and great culture goes hand in hand. Next one's from Christian Thibodeau is, show me an athlete that cheats technique and I'll show you an athlete with joint issues, right? If you're not establishing how to train the right way, the effects that you're eliciting is going to be bad, right? So if you're allocating all this volume and you got this percentage-based training and you got this 1 rep training max, and then you start to train and you let the technique go out the window, you're getting a training effect, just a bad one, and you're actually going, right? Me and Kyle Little, who's going to talk on here later, talked about it. He's like, why would you try to get a bunch of reps in that are bad, right? Why are you trying to get a bunch of reps in that are bad? Because at the end of the day, you're actually creating a compensation that is going against what you want. So why won't you do less reps with a lot of quality and go from there and then demand that technique, right? That doesn't mean that you shouldn't lift heavy. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't train hard. You know, that's the thing that we get mixed up, is that training hard and training with intensity and a lot of focus that you have to lift something heavy. That's not necessarily the truth. Now, when you try to get under something heavy and you don't get focused, you'll get exposed, and kids don't like that. You know, insecurity and competitiveness with kids, that might force some focus. But really, the true mental toughness is when you walk in that door and it's ready to warm up. Where's your mind at? Are you doing everything through the line? Are you lining up correctly? Or do you have the right clothes on? It all starts there. So I'm telling you guys, even though I have these cool tools that are very technical when it comes to programming, if these things aren't in line, it don't matter anyway. It don't even matter. You might as well just put those percentages behind it and work on something else first. Okay, and then from there, you need to record data along the way and then make decisions. Okay, record good reps for adjustment of training maxes as you go. Don't record bad reps. And when I say record, I mean like when you're writing them down to assess. Okay, if you're recording bad reps, if you get to a higher intensity, and what's not always going to be pretty, right? Training's not always pretty. Kids are learning, especially early, right? He hits a rep that he gets up and grinds up, but in a clean, he freaking throws his feet out, arches his low back, and reverse curls it. Looks like a dang starfish out there. It's probably not something you want to train off of. Probably not something that you want to record as a training max. Make sure that you're recording good reps. Okay, so here's my data collection process. Now, I don't have any fancy Tendo units. I don't even use any type of software like Team Builder, Train Heroic, Coach Me Plus, any of those things. Elite Form and Perch, and a lot of those really higher end things. I don't have that. Never have. You don't have to, right? And I do this because I've really dove in, and I'm going to shout out some guys I know. Angelo James, who's the founder of Ideas Training Systems. He really helped open my eyes on how you can systemize things within Google Sheets and within Excel, and try to cut down some time so you can make decisions a whole lot faster. So that's what I did. I've dedicated my craft to learning some skills on that area, and created somewhat of an algorithmic system to be able to get answers quicker, right? To get answers quicker. When I get answers quicker, I can make decisions and affect behavior quicker. So during this process, this is what happens. So we train. Athletes writes down reps and reserve score on their top set of the day for our main KPI. So like if we're lifting day one for me, because I train on a 2-day-a-week year round, 48 weeks out of the year, athlete's going to write down. So day one, first going to be our clean variation. So top set of that. And then going into our second block is going to be our squat, our main squat movement, which is usually going to follow with a front squat. At the high school level, they're also going to write down their reps and reserve score for their top set. Okay, after that, they put it on their cards. So I do have a little bit of help. So it's just me, but I also have teacher's aides, like in high school. I get an aide that's a senior that doesn't have class. And I also get some interns from the local university at University of Alabama in Huntsville come down. I get 1 to 2 a semester. So we have a little system going on where people have certain responsibilities in order to get this done. I have a laptop and I have an iMac in my office, so we're allowed to get some of these things done. Once they write down all these scores on their cards get collected, put into a master data sheet. You're going to see this here in a minute. I'm going to give some examples, and then it's get put into a projection algorithm for a projected training max, just to see. Okay, now I'm not saying that after it gets put in this algorithm and all of a sudden training max changes. That's not the point. We'll get to that in a second. When I mass analyze, because look, guys, I'm training 300 student athletes. I don't have time. I mean, I do have the time, but it would take me hours out of the week to go down and look at every single one and make a decision on, okay, does this really need to improve based off projection? Does this need to be backed off? Does it need to stay the same? So what I do is that I use conditional formatting. I use color coding. That way I can see it a whole lot better. I'll show you here in a minute, because I can go through it 10 times as fast with colors than worrying about trying to decipher a number. And if it's just me, once I learned how to do this system, and I was back home hanging out with my family, not spending hours on a computer. 4 is I adjust training maxes bi-weekly. I think that if you adjust the training max too often, you're not taking into account all the variables, right? You may have a guy, especially at the high school level, man, I see this all the time. You got the pretty girl in the hallway, gave him a wink as he's walking down. Boy, he's coming in that weight room juiced up. He may hit a number you ain't never seen because he's finally training with some serious intensity, feeling good about himself, really confident. And then the next week, she may shut him down because she's playing with his feelings. And then he comes into the weight room and hits something so low, you're like, dude, what's going on? Right? That comes back to that culture and that relationship of understanding, like, what's going on? What's happening? So going from there. After that, I make those assessments, And then over time, I'm gonna do a meta-analysis to see, are there any established trends up or down, both quantitative and qualitative. Okay, quantitative, you're gonna see the numbers. Are we staying around a baseline as an average of a team, or are we trending up as far as 1RM projection? See, this is where we get to, people say don't chase numbers, but I believe that 1RM's projections are super important, right? If we're gonna train majorly in the 70 to 85% intensity range, I want to see that 70 to 85% move up the chain as we go. See, I don't have to necessarily test on 1RM to find this out. I project the 1RM, but I want you guys to understand how it's defined rather than just, oh, can he get it up? And when I say qualitative is it comes back down to the quality of the movement and the quality of the things that our athletes are completing, right? Because if at the end of the day, if you stress the number too much and not the quality of the movement, you're going to see athletes cheat it in order to reach that, right? But on the flip side, what you think is funny, if you get the quality of movement, the numbers are going to go up a whole lot better anyway. Your guys are going to stay healthy, and those should be your main KPIs as you go. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a look at what this looks like. This is an example of the top half of my training card for our women's basketball team. This is how I set it up. I like to have 4 metrics on my card for everybody to see. Every player. I don't go more than three players a rack, so this is what it looks like. For an exercise, they got their exercise up there, and then they've got 4 metrics. They've got how many reps they got to hit that set, how much weight needs to be on the bar, what their reps and reserve scores should be based on the intensity that we're lifting at. Okay, so they're going to go down one set at a time for every single thing they have. Okay, and when I have my training cards, my reps and reserve scores automatically populate based off a chart that I'm going to show you here in a second. And for example, like if we get down here, let's look at the front squat. Let's say D right here. She's a commit to play basketball at the University of Arkansas. She's a very special athlete. Get down on the front squat. On her last set, she should hit 225 for 2, and she should have 2 reps left in the tank on a really good day at 85%, somewhere around there. Okay. Now remember, this is a ballpark, right? It's not going to be perfect, and I'll go into that here in a second with this chart that you can see at this intensity. Make sure, remember, there's prerequisites are that the movement's good. She's being taught correctly. Up here, you can see that she's in the advanced group, right? So I train off a multi-tiered level. Okay, so a novice, intermediate, and advanced group as we train all at the same time. Because at the high school level, my situation currently is that my training sessions happen during school, and they're only separated boys and girls. And then in that boys class or in that girls class, I may have a senior Division I athlete that have the capability to train a certain way. But then I've got, Johnny Trumpet down there in the band that's a 9th grader that's 114 pounds that don't know his elbow from his ankle. So having to train it on a tiered progressive leveling system, I'm able to do this, and everybody's not training this way. So she's in the advanced stage, training this way, and then they're just going to go through these sets. I'm coaching her up really good, and at the end, she's going to hit 225 for 2 and go from there. Now, I also have a different system because, like in the high school level, we're not always there is no set off season, set in season, set preseason. I'm not just training the women's basketball team here. I can have the soccer team, the tennis team, the softball team, and the volleyball team all training together in different sports, whether they're in season or off season. Right? I have a system that I've actually wrote a book on with my stoplight system that helps in-season high school athletes that are always in season, multi-sport athletes, to be able to train in season the best way. So they might not always hit the same weight or the same reps. Okay, so for example, if we're in season and it's a game day, we're going to skip our last set here and we're going to cut our reps in half. So her top set, if it's a game day, she's going to hit 210 for 2, okay, and be done. Now that's going to change her reps in reserve, right? So she's got to make that assessment as she goes, and then whenever she's done, she's going to record whatever she did that day, right? So let's say it's not a game day, it's normal. She hit 225, she's going to write in 225. If she hit 2 reps, she's going to write in 2 reps. If she believes that score is accurate, that she's got 2 left in the tank, she's going to write that down. If she doesn't think, she's like, Coach, I definitely had 3, she's going to write it down. If she's like, Coach, that was really hard, I think I only got 1, I'm going to write it down. Now, understand this is really subjective, right? So this gives me an opportunity to dive into some of the qualitative metrics too. Because like, for example, with D here, you know, she's a really strong girl, but she doesn't know how strong she is. And she's a really good, she trains really well. And she's like, oh, coach, I think I have one left. And I was like, did you see the velocity on that bar? You had 3 left. There's no doubt about it. So I'll intervene sometimes if I'm watching and write it down. And then as they go, and as the closer we get to our capabilities, because our training quality is number one first, they're going to get more of an idea of understanding how those reps in reserve are defined. You have to establish that. I can't just assume that they know what that means. I also can't assume that they are always going to be accurate. I've got to be able to know our kids and know how to make adjustments on the fly, right? And when they do have a game, or they're a day before a game or whatever, depending on how they make their adjustments based on our system, the algorithm is going to take care of it for me based off their assessment, right? So they give these 3 metrics and go from there. Like another example is that she hit 225. She only hit 1 because on the second rep, let's say she, uh, sorry, I'm reading this chat. Got a question come in, but so 220. Like say she hit 225 for 1, she missed her second rep based off of technicality, and I saw it. Right, I know that she's still capable. So whenever I go back and look at those training maxes, I might not necessarily make a change. It just depends. Zach Tyler just asked, based off the demands of your athletes playing multiple sports and lack of an off season, how do you plan out your mesocycle? So what I do, so basically because of my schedule, one of the first things I got to look at is in my schedule, we're operating off an alternating block system. So that means that our kids have 8 classes. They see 4 classes on one day, and then they alternate to their other day with 4 classes 5 through 8. So classes 1 through 4 are an A day, classes 5 through 8 are a B day. So if you look at a Monday through Friday, you're looking at A, B, A, B, A. So A day classes are going to see me 3, B day classes are going to see me 2. I don't write 2 different programs. It took a lot of frustration and trial and error for me to figure out that, one, we're a small school and 90% of our athletes are playing on multiple sports. The only common denominator with our schedule throughout the year is that everybody's going to get 2 sessions a week. So what I decided to do was that we're just going to train 2 days a week. And if they hit that third day, that's going to be something totally different, whether it be character education, teach them about something non-barbell, such as mobility training. We may do something fun. We may go outside and do some competitive games. That's what we've really caught on to towards before we got out for this virus thing, that we don't have a whole lot of time to do any sprinting, conditioning, change direction. We do sprint every single day. We do 2 10-yard sprints, timed, recorded, ranked, and published based off of Tony Holler's system. We do that every single training session, no matter what. But as far as like the energy system development, I don't get to do that. So we'll just pick a game like ultimate frisbee, basketball. We'll play something that the kids love because their intent's going to be high and they're going to get after it. Now, the kids that are in season, they got a game that day and they lands on a Friday like that. Let's say it's like football. I'm not going to let them do that. I'm going to let them rest and get ready for the game. As long as they've got their 2 training sessions in already. So I plan out my mesocycles over. I just plan an off-season program, man. They're high school kids. Like I'm not too concerned with trying to plan for every little intricacy, because at the end of the day, they need to develop. And high school kids' adaptability is so high that I'm not trying to, I'm not worried about them being sore as long as they're consistent. Plus, we're only training 2 days a week. They're going to have plenty of time to recover as long as we're continue preaching, learning how to recover, how to sleep, how to eat the right way, how to hydrate, things like that. And then based off my stoplight system, the closer they are, if they're in season, the closer they are to competition, they're going to back off their volume. That's literally all it does. Here, I can actually show you. I'll come back to my presentation here in a second. Let's see if I can pull this up. This is a great question. I want to make sure this gets covered. Go to my Google Drive here so you guys can see it, what this stoplight system actually looks like. Pulling it up right now in my charts and stuff. Let's see, let me get here. Yes, I'll get to that. But I do want to show this. I should have put this in my training session, in my presentation. But as far as my stoplight system goes, I'll answer it at the end as well. But I wanted you guys to see this. Let's see if it's here. Yeah, here it is. Okay, so you guys can see based off my stoplight system here that they just basically look at it, and I make it simple because at the end of the day, what's going to drive soreness is time and attention and volume, and the way things are set up. So if it's a game day, and when I say game day, it means competition. That can be a large scrimmage. That could be anything. Right? If we're in spring ball, it's the same thing. If it's on a game day, we're going to skip our top set. It's going to cut some intensity. We're going to cut reps in half. If it's a day before a game, we complete all our sets. We cut our reps in half. If we're 2 days or more out, we're going to train as normal. So that's what that looks like as far as the stoplight goes, and go from there. And I'll make sure I answer that question towards the end. From here, okay, it gets put into a mass Google sheet to where things get automatically projected based off of the movement that day. So like, for example, this is where those 3 metrics are going to get put in. It's going to automatically spit out a projection, and it's always going to project. This is going to project whatever we're doing that day. So like if we're projecting, like if we're doing a hang clean, it's going to project the hang clean, but our main KPI is the actual clean. So I got to make an adjustment there. And from there, it gets put into our mass for each KPI that we have. So for example, here, if we look in our phase 2, where we were at, this is their training max that they started the phase off with, okay, the 4-week cycle. And then based off of right here, this is going to be what they projected at for that week. So for example, we were doing a low hang clean, which I projected to be right around 80%, give or take, of the actual clean. Okay, so that means their work for that in week 1 projected at 190 of a low hang clean. That's going to project at 240 of the actual clean with an 8% improvement from where they started. After week 1, I'm not going to make a change. All right, I'm going to stick with it because I want to see if we can still make adaptations. All right, we go to week 2. They projected at 205, which is going to project at a 255 actual clean. Now, that doesn't mean that they can actually hit that because of the skill level necessary, but that doesn't mean they can't train off that number. Now, just because they projected here, I'm not going to jump from 220 to 255 on the spot. It's too big of a jump, right? We need to make sure I would rather undershoot with great technique and great bar speed because I'm still going to see results and I'm going to keep our guys healthy. From here, we saw a 14% change from week 1, from 2 weeks of training. Projected new max. So here, what I'm going to do is I have this algorithm set up to where half of this is where it's going to be improvement, right? I'm not just going to go straight into 255. Half of that, so a 7% improvement from 220. Going into week 3, we're going to start training off 235 for the clean off top, right? And this system has proven to not, over time, has proven to not have any detriment as far as technique goes. These are mostly for, I adjust mostly for my advanced athletes. My 9th graders go through a full novice program. It's pretty rigid. I make sure that we don't really get above. We rarely hit above 85% of relative intensity ever on any movement with our young guys. And then as we get a little bit older and you've been in the program for over a year, then we can really start cranking it up. So like over here in phase 3, so like this is a true KPI. So if we're doing a clean from the floor, that is our true KPI. So there's no adjustment need to be made. So like, from here, he had a 6% improvement, and then he projected at 285 right there. So that's a pretty dang big jump from 230. I mean, you guys know that if you clean 230 and clean 285, that's 2 totally different things, especially for high school kids. He may have had a good day that day. May be able to hit 3 really good reps and some good speed. Maybe the projection was a little off, right? So that's how I account for that by cutting that in half. And we're going to start training off 250. Remember, I don't hardly ever go over 85%. During training. The 90% or really 75% of our training is going to be between 70 and 85% as we go. And once we get to that point where we want to hit those higher intensities, it's pretty much checked out to where our guys have been pretty close to this number. So that's what I do. And after I get all these numbers, I make decisions based off what I see. Okay. And then right here, you see these colors, green, yellow, and red. If you don't see it right here, but if you see a really dark red number, that means like they missed by like over 20%, right? They have a regression of over 20%. I need to ask myself, okay, well, what happened, right? Well, why is that, right? Okay, kid got hurt. Okay, that makes sense, right? We're training off something lighter. Or if I see a blue number, that means they improved over 20%. If they improve over 20%, over 25%, then that tells me that something different happened. So they're young, or they've never done this before, or they're returning to play, and we're starting to crank it up a little bit faster because they're ready to roll. So everybody knows, and they're wondering what my reps and reserve chart looks like. Everybody's familiar with the relative intensity table for the most part. At least I hope you are. And then from this, I created this new table called reps in reserve intensity. So basically what we're looking at is, like, for example, if I'm asking for an 80% for 2 or an 80% for 3, right? So 80% for 3, we should have around 2 reps left in the tank. As you can see, I leave 2 reps range here for a true 1RM at 100%, right? 1 rep left in the tank or 2 reps left in the tank before I start climbing up, because every kid and skill level is going to be different. The higher you rise in that relative intensity depends on skill level of where they're at as far as doing the movement itself. I like to give some wiggle room. And you know what? If I undershoot, good. I'm okay with that, because at the end of the day, 1RM is not my measurement, right? It's just a projection that I use to get good training, right? So how do I improve, and how does the algorithm work? So for example, if I've got 80%, actually let's use 85%. Say I have 85% for 3 coming up, they should have around 1 rep left in the tank. Well, let's say they had 4 reps left in the tank. And they're like, whoa, okay, like bar speed was rolling, 4 reps left in the tank. If you look at that same rep scheme and find 4, that movement, what was prescribed as 85, that day acted as 75, if accurate, right? So you try to get as close as possible. You put that in, you see the adjustment. That's why I make the improvements of half the percentage. That way I don't miss something. I don't want to overshoot, because that's not my goal. I'm not trying to get to a certain number. I'm trying to train with more volume and more density at higher intensities to elicit adaptations over time. That's all I'm trying to do, because I know that's what's going to translate to the field. So I don't rush training maxes up. But this right here, these calculations allow me to really be able to see, to be able to be as accurate as possible. So here's my meta-analysis. Okay, so here's what I've tracked for our football team right before we got on this hiatus. Man, I'm so pissed off, because boy, we were rolling, man. You know, our guys were finally starting to use their hips and their clean. They're finally starting to get after it. The culture was getting where it was. Our head football coach is doing a phenomenal job of holding our guys to the fire and getting after it and approaching that bar. As you can see, you know, in week 1, coming off of Christmas, coming into January, we started off as a training max of 180, a training max average 1RM projection. And as we go, you can see that man, progress is not linear. You know, here's another example. Like, things are going to dip, things are going to go up. We had a huge jump in week 3, based off where the program was going and based off how they performed. Man, we had a really good week in week 3, and we dipped back down. But as you can see, this green line is trending up, right? And I was super excited. Our goal is like, man, team average, we got to get above 225 the right way by the end of the semester, you know, by the end, before we go into spring practice, because, you know, in high school, spring practice is done in May. So going into the summer, we wanted to be right there, and we were just going to keep rolling. And then this virus came in and said, nah, this ain't happening. But this is a great way for me to see where we're at. And I make sure I do this for every single thing we do, right? So clean, squat, deadlift, bench press, okay? All the things that we do that we see as strength KPIs for us, that's what we use in order to see improvement over time. And if I continue to see trends going upward, I'm not going to change, right? If I see something dip down, you know, just for a second, I'm going to stay in it, right? But over 3 or 4 weeks, if I see trending down, then I need to have systems in place to be able to make a decision to change that. So in conclusion, I got 5 quick points, and then we can get to some Q&A. Number 1, emphasize development over false displays, right? Kids want to display strength. They don't ever want to develop it, right? It takes a whole lot of focus and discipline to be really good in training your movements when they're not at max capacity, especially for our high school kids, because all they want to do is flex on each other. All they want to do is because they're so insecure, they just want to prove to everybody in the room that they're the alpha based off of 1RM. But I try to tell them all day, you know what the alpha comes in? Alpha comes in and works and holds everybody to the standard, no matter if it's 50% or 500. We're going to get rolling. Develop numbers from good training. Don't get maxes from bad lifts. You know, you see these terrible cleans, these terrible half squats. You know, you see kids low backs looking terrible. If you're training off that, you're just asking yourself to get bad adaptations. Don't do that. You can use reps in reserve to determine progress and change, just like I did. You can use this. If you guys have more questions on this, hit me up. I'd love to guide you in the right way, in the right direction to do this. This has helped me without having a Tendo, without having anything, to adjust training maxes over time, so I can continue to be precise in my adaptations that I'm trying to get, and training effects that I'm trying to get from my programming. Number 4, emphasize the correct qualities to transfer to sport. Don't always try to hit heavy weight all the time, man. You want to try to be as powerful as possible to transfer to sport. And number 5 is quit making up BSPR numbers when we all know you're full of it. You're not impressing anybody. You know, the great ones in this field look at that. We see it on Twitter all the time. I probably do a really terrible job of calling people out. I'm pretty big of a butthole on Twitter. sometimes, and I know I need to chill out, but I see it too much of some of these private trainers and stuff throwing out these numbers, and you see these videos and you know for a fact that it's not making that kid better. It's only putting them in the hardest way. You know, never blame the kid. It's always the adult, always the coach's fault. Make sure you're holding yourself to a really high standard. So if you got any questions, here's my contact info, my email. I'm the same handle at Twitter and Instagram. I'm a lot more active on Twitter than I am Instagram. I haven't really figured out how to leverage Instagram yet, but you're more than welcome to reach out to me at either one. I'm pretty active. I try to answer everybody's questions as much as possible and try to relate it, you know, to your situation if can. I'm always open. I love to talk shop. If you guys want to hit me up for any of that, more than welcome. So, Coach, that's it, man. I'm good and ready to go.
Cody, great job.
Q&A.
That was awesome. So I'm just going to jump straight into the Q&A. Some of the questions we have on YouTube. Mark is asking about the reserve score and basically how it works. So he's asking if he has down 5 on the sheet and he does 3 reps, he's asking basically if he then scores a 2.
Right. So let me go back to, hold on. Let me share my screen again. Can you share those numbers with me one more time? Absolutely.
So he's asking if he has down 5. I'm guessing on the
reps.
Yes, and then he does 3. He's asking about the reserve score. I think he's asking if he would then score 2.
Right. So that right there will project. You can see right here anywhere from 75 to 77.5%. Mm-hmm. Right. So you can project from there. So just do the math. Right. Reverse engineer. That should project somewhere close in the ballpark. But remember, like, you've seen some people hit a number at 75%, and then it gets time to get under a heavy freaking bar, and they don't have the skill set to hit that heavy weight because they don't understand what it's like to train under something so heavy. That's why it's important to train heavy eventually. But then again, like, that's not our training max is based off of being able to train, to me, in between 70 to 85% at a higher velocity and higher power output, not necessarily just trying to hit that 1 RM. So it's just all based off the chart, man. You find the reps, find the number, look up, there's your intensity.
Sounds great. All right. Next, Miles is asking, how do you inform the head coaches about your approach? Basically, how do you present this from like a 1,000-foot view to your head coach and how you explain your training?
No doubt, man. This is a great question. I think that, one, you got to establish a relationship with your coach anyway. And I try to use as much data as possible in a layman's terms capability, you know, and you talk about I just reverse engineer, like, all right, coach, what makes a good football player? Right? You want them to do these things, right? Well, let me talk about the qualities of training and how the science backs that up. And then I have to give them a little bit of what they want, you know, like coach wants to see, they want to see the grind. They want to see intensity. They want to see, so your culture better back that up. Like, you don't think that just because the bar is light, that it's a light day. That's not what that means, right? People want to say, like, that's why I hate the word max effort. Because when you say that to kids and you say it's not a max effort day, they think that it's not a day to go hard or it's not a day with intent. I don't say that to kids. No, like, I may say that with us strength coaches, but I don't say that to my head coach either. Like, hey, coach, Monday was a max effort day. Today's not. He's like, what the crap you talking about? What you mean it's not a max? We're not giving maximum effort. So I have to be very careful with my language there. And at the end of the day, I'll give you some proof. Like last year, we dressed 29 guys in the first round of the playoffs. 29 guys playing 5A football, right? We had 29 to 32 guys dressed all year. We had 2 injuries. We had a broken leg on a crackback punt return for a touchdown, and we had a high ankle sprain on an extra point. That's it, right? And we didn't have a great year last year. We went 10-2 the year before. I mean, I'm going to knock on wood. You know, I'm not saying that I'm the sole cause of that, because that's ridiculous. We have a great head coach who understands how to plan practice. We have great administration. We have great people in place to do that. But at the end of the day, if I'm not always in communication with my coach and investing in the relationships with my coach, then I'm doing myself a disservice. You know, at the end of the day, you need to listen to him too, because he's probably got some good things to say. You know, my head coach is in the weight room with me all day. It's what he does. He doesn't teach a class at the high school level. He's in the weight room, and I'm very lucky because my head coach, who's been doing this for 30 years, is really knowledgeable. He's growth mindset. He's asking me questions. He's challenging me. I'm challenging him. We're on the same page, and we're coaching our face off every day to get our guys better. Because here in Alabama, man, we're a 3A size school. We got 480 kids from 7th to 12th grade, and we're having to play 5A schools and compete. And we got a tradition at Madison Academy that we're going to chase state championships. We're going to chase that blue mat.
Sounds good. Coach Garasio is asking, how do you select with the test? So what's your KPI?
Yeah, so I mean, I try to make it as simple as possible. So for the most part, I just try to hit our main movements. So as far as movements go, we're going to hit a clean, and when I say clean, I'm projecting full clean based off of all the derivatives, right? So I allocate a percentage based off derivative, and then squat, right? So my front squat's going to be around 80% of a back squat number. So I'm looking at that number, and then looking at relative strength based on body weight. And I'm actually in the process, because I'm only going into year 3 for the high school setting. I'm trying to see a sliding scale of relative intensity going anywhere from my 112-pound athlete to my 300-pound athlete. What are some good, ratios of our KPIs that we need to be hitting? I'm still collecting data. I'm not quite there yet. I'm really just focused on trying to see improvement as far as movement goes and projectability. So clean squat, I'm a big believer in the front squat, but I love the back squat too. We won't back squat until a kid has a minimum of 500 working reps underneath his belt, because I think that's where I've seen most kids be able to move in full range of motion and great kinematics. And then from there, we'll go to a trap bar deadlift. We deadlift with a trap bar, and basically because I want to squat twice a week, we only train twice a week. In order to take some load off our spine, instead of hitting another squat, we do a trap bar deadlift. That's another lower body strengthening movement. It's not necessarily a true hinge. It almost looks like a squat pattern, kind of a hybrid. You've seen it. But we can really load that up, and if we want to be able to express and expose our guys to some higher intensities for some volume, trap bar deadlift's the way to do it, at least at the high school level. We hit our bench press, and then we hit our chin-ups, right? So chin-ups are still a real stickler. So I treat the chin-up and program it just like anything else, but it's different because if a kid's pretty weak and, one rep, if you get a kid that can only do 3 reps on the chin-up, he's starting with his body weight at around 85, 90%, right? So if he's starting the training, if he's starting his chin-up reps at 90%, your volume better be super low, or you better find a way to back some of that volume up. I'm attempting to try to do that with a band, right? Trying to understand how much intensity that breaks off. I haven't really found a way to do that. I don't have lat pull-down machines to be able to do that. But as far as the non-lifting stuff, we do a vertical jump. We usually do that every day. We usually potentiate that with our squat on day 1. So I have jump mats, and I collect that over time. And then I collect our every single week. Like I said earlier, we do our 10-yard sprints. I hand time it just because I don't have anything, but I know my thumb is at least consistent. I don't necessarily look at the number. I look at the progression over time to see if we see improvement. And then obviously how healthy we are.
Right. You got to make lemonade out of lemons. Chris, I hope that answered your question as well about the KPIs, sort of kind of an umbrella approach. I think that's all we got for right now. Appreciate it, Coach. Great job.
Absolutely.